Hey everyone, today is another great episode as we're going to be talking about core mechanics. What makes a great core mechanic and why it is important to have them in your game. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, I hope you're well, playing and or making the games that you love. You're joining me, your host, Max Pears. Thank you all very much for joining me. This is a really exciting one. It's one I've been wanting to do for a little bit of time since after completing God of War, as well as finishing not too long ago, obviously Mario Odyssey. Probably that was a while ago now that I'm thinking about it. But what these have really made me think about recently, the core mechanics. And a lot of things goes into the core mechanics, and there's a lot of stuff that makes an amazing mechanic. And after playing these two games, it really got me thinking about how to make sure that your core mechanics stand out. How can you make sure that these mechanics are memorable and continue throughout the game that you are making and or playing in a way that it keeps things interesting for the player as well. And that was a really cool one for me to see these two examples, and I'm currently playing through Spider-Man as well. And that swinging, for example, the swinging and their combat, I think are fantastic in terms of game feel. And we're going to do another episode on that one, I think, a little bit later. But like I said, we're going to be talking about, firstly, what a core mechanic is, how to improve it, and as just mentioned there, the two main examples that we're going to be using throughout this topic will be God of War and Mario Odyssey. Because to me, these are two of the strongest mechanics and definitely how they use them within any game of recent time. So let's get into it. So when I talk about a core mechanic, what is that? A core mechanic is that of the main mechanic within your game. Now there tends to be a lot of mechanics that players will unlock as the game progresses, or that they can gain you through their skill tree, these sort of things. But the core mechanic is the one that the players have constantly, and the one that will most likely rely on as they go through the game constantly. And with the first two, with the examples we're talking about, we have Mario, which is basically the movement of jump. There are many different forms of jump, but you as Mario, as he used to be known as Jumping Man in Donkey Kong, is all about how he jumps, how he moves through the air, the different types of jumps available to Mario. But that is the core mechanic of Mario, is jumping. And if you think about it, in God of War, is the Leviathan axe. That axe is an amazing, amazing feeling to have, and to use that, I think, is truly one of the best mechanics that have come for a very long time in terms of feel. But as I said, that tends to be the core mechanic. So let's talk about why that is important to the game. It is important because it's what the player will learn to master. It is what they have at the beginning, but they will keep using throughout the game. So one of the ways to help make the core mechanic stand out is basically through the sense of mastery. And let's talk about this one now. In the example of Mario, I mentioned that there's multiple jumps available. You have just the normal jump, the double jump, you can jump to the side, back flips, and also do a butt stomp with the jump as well. But you also have things like the slide jump, as well as, if depending on how long you hold the jump button, can actually affect how high you jump as well. And all of this is available at the beginning for the player. None of this is hidden, none of this is revealed through tutorials. All of this is available right from the get-go. It is up to you as the player to figure out how to do this. Just take that in for a second. There isn't a lengthy tutorial on this. It is literally given to the player. But some players may never ever use or discover how to do that because they don't spend the time on it. Because the way they've done it is that they've made the game, or should I say the golden path of the game, being able to be completed without these jumps. However, you can unlock, for example, in Mario Odyssey, different moons because of you mastering these skills. It's because of a backflip that you can reach a ledge which you cannot do through the ordinary play style. And it's because of that mastery that players enjoy this core mechanic. It's because of that players feel a sense of growth, a progression, and that's without being told how to do it. So when you are thinking of a core mechanic, Think about how you're able to make that mechanic feel as if there's more to it by rewarding the player for experimenting with that mechanic. What can you offer them for just playing around with that control system? In what sense can you make things better for the player by just having a different way of just as simple of tapping a button or holding a button? What can you do to change that result? And as I said, the way that they then encourage players to find these different types of jumps is by having certain moons hidden around, and being able to move around the space to get that. The reason they're set up for that is because they want you, the player, to find these new ways to jump, to master that mechanic. And that's incredible. I really do like how that they have not hidden it behind a tutorial wall. It's there for you to experiment with. It's there for you to try jumping and moving the analog stick at the same time by having that double tapping, holding it. A simple reflex can change a lot, and that makes it feel amazing. Next, about what makes a core mechanic important is the feel itself. Now let's talk about the Leviathan axe in God of War. That feels amazing. It is by far one of the best features of that video game. There is a lot to love of God of War. I am a huge fan of that game. Just that Leviathan axe feels so badass. It's unbelievable. Truly amazing. And what makes it feel that great? Firstly is the feedback. When you call that Leviathan axe back, you feel it. That rumble in the controller, as if that axe now has weight to it. It doesn't just come back and Kratos catches it instantly. It has weight to it because you feel it as well. And when you look with the animation, his arm comes back as well the same time the control rumbles. So you instantly, it's pleasing the two senses, your sight and your feel as well, or touch, sorry. And by having these two combined, it makes it have that much more of a bigger impact. And it makes it feel, like I said, like it has weight to it. I think that's really amazing with that. Another one with it is that it's about how, for example, this game, how it comes back to the player. It's not just a straight line. No. This comes back to the player in kind of a more curved angle. And what's great about this one is that, as I just said about mastery here, if it came back straight to the player, well then, it would be a lot quicker. But if I'm remembering correctly, it adds more risk reward to this mechanic here. Because I said, if it comes back in a straight line, then you can be very quick with it. But now that it comes at a curve, it's a slight delay. So now you feel exposed if you've thrown it wrong and you're surrounded by a group of enemies. You as a player have to figure out if this is the right opportunity to throw it. What happens if I miss? Am I going to be overrun by enemies? It's this sort of thing that makes that mechanic feel like it has more of an impact as well. By having that sense of, as I said, risk reward, by having that sense of being vulnerable if you make a mistake, it makes you understand the mechanic better, assessing how to use this in a much more tactical way. And I think that's a great one for this. And also, going back to the mastery element, with this, if you throw it and then learn how the curve comes back, well then, you can use it to help maybe trip up enemies, because if it comes behind an enemy and trips them up, then now they're exposed, and you can use that to your advantage. So again, that's really cool. And with that feel as well, it's amazing because that does damage on the way out and on the way back as well. So again, it's adding that tactical element to you as a player when you are throwing that axe. When do you want to use this? And is it the right time? How can you get the most out of this experience? That's another way that it makes it feel great. Another one that I forgot to mention with when it comes back is that sound. When you hear that axe come back, amazing job by the audio designers there, because it sounds amazing when you throw it and when you receive it. It is a fantastic sound that they've added towards it as well. What else that makes this really cool? There's so many things. Obviously particle effects as well. By having that juice to it, it makes it feel even better by having all these signs and feedback. It is an amazing mechanic without a shadow of a doubt. So yeah, when you're doing things like this, make sure that you do have a good feel to it. How you can have a sense of feedback, whether it be through audio, visual, through touch with the rumble, as well as making sure when you use it, is there a strategy to it? With Mario, it's timing that jump correctly, because certain things have gaps, enemies, they have to be timed correctly, because you can't, for For example, you can land on the top of Gumbas, but maybe on other enemies who have helmets or spikes on top of them, you cannot land on top of them. So it's all about timing, so you have that sense of feel with each jump having a different effect as well.
If you love game and level design as much as we do, then why not consider supporting Level Design Lobby on Patreon? Patreon is a crowdfunding platform that allows people to directly fund the content and creators that they love. From as little as $1 per month, you can help support us in our mission to unite and teach people across the world about the wonderful and unique field of game and level design, and get some great reward perks in return, such as access to the Level Design Lobby community Discord, bi-monthly webinars, level design weekends, and much more. So head on over to patreon.com/Level Design Lobby for more information and to pledge your support today. Finally, we'd just like to say a massive thank you to all our current backers. It's thanks to the generous support of people like you that we are able to grow and can continue to bring you awesome, new and exciting content. So thank you. And now back to our regularly scheduled program.
Now we've gone through this, let's talk about the different ways that you can and should be able to use your core mechanic. Now, in both of those games, the mechanics that I've listed, the jumps and the Leviathan Axe, are used in more than just one way. For example, in God of War, you can obviously use it for your combat purposes, but you can also use it to solve puzzles. And it's used to help traverse through the space as well. And what's great with this is there's layers to this mechanic now. It's not just one-dimensional. There's multiple ways that you are able to use this. Whether it be the puzzles that you open a gate and then need to free some gears by throwing your axe there, or the puzzles of you have these kind of windmill panels that you have to keep hitting to make them turn in order for something to lift up. It's all about how they use this. And those examples I've just given, they may be under the bracket of puzzles, but they are used in different ways. One is just a one and instant done action, while the other one is multiple hits over and over, which is fantastic because you're now used to using it. It is now super important for you to have that axe. It now is valuable to you because not only does it help save you in combat situations, obviously against certain enemy types, it's not great. However, it's used in such a remarkable way that you now need it to help you progress on your journey to make your way through the mountains. So I think that's really nice there, how it can be used in multiple ways. And think about the same with Mario. We were just chatting about earlier then with its sense of mastery, but that jump is used in so many different ways. You can use it just to jump up, or use that dive to go across longer distances. You can use a backflip to jump higher as well. That's that jump used in different ways, taking different forms, allowing you to solve the environment's puzzles in different ways, all because it is the same mechanic, but just as I said, used in multiple ways. So when you're creating a core mechanic, think about that it's not just a one and done mechanic. Think about how it can be used in different ways of your environment. Even if it's used in combat, how can it be used in different ways of combat? You know, the Leviathan Axe, we can use that up close and personal to do our quick or heavy attacks, but we can also use it to throw at enemies, sometimes to trip them up, sometimes to damage them. If they're a certain type of enemy, then they can be frozen on the spot as well. All of this is fantastic because, again, you're using that mechanic in just a different way. And that, I love it. I love these mechanics because, as I said, it's just so important. And as Stuart Scott, drilled into my head when I was working with him. If you don't know who he is one of the lead designers at Ubisoft. We did an episode together. Check it out, episode 15. But the thing that he keeps hammering on about is it's about depth, not breadth. Making sure that you can use this in a number of variety of ways. Don't have 101 mechanics that you can throw at it and then are instantly forgotten. Think about how you can use these in different ways, to the fact that now it has become super important because of this. And now that mechanic is memorable because you're able to use this in different ways. Now let's talk about these mechanics being, I guess, how do I phrase this correctly? As if they've been twisted. And what I mean by this is when you think about the Leviathan Axe in God of War, you can't use it to win against every enemies. You can only use it against certain enemies, or it'll have effect on certain enemies. Some it can freeze on the spot, other ones it doesn't do any damage to. And this is really cool when you think about it. Because although we've now just talked about the importance and making it feel like it is now an important part, it also, by doing such a thing like this in God of War, by making some enemies impervious towards this attack, it makes the mechanic, well, it forces players to use other mechanics available to them, but it also makes you realize that even though this is an important mechanic, it is not something that you should rely on, forcing players to play in a different way. And if you remember one of the episodes I talk about Zelda Breath of the Wild, one of the reasons that I enjoy the weapon breaking system is because it forces you to try different weapons at your disposal to master these different ones so you don't get comfortable in a certain playstyle. And it's similar to that with God of War in terms of more that, oh no, I can't use my axe now. How am I going to beat them? Well, I've got a shield as well as my fists. And it's that sort of thing which I think is really interesting. The fact that they have taken the time to make this mechanic feel so important and strong, but also make it feel weak as well. Sorry, I said wow because I was blown away just when I'm thinking about it. It's just like, it's really incredible the detail and thought process that that team has gone through to think about that. And I think that's a really interesting one. By putting that twist on it, you now understand that you need to be smart with it. That this may be an important tool, but it's only a tool out of a tool set. And it also, as I said, encourages players to play in a different way. Now, Mario does things a little bit different with their core mechanic because it adds other mechanics to try complement it. We speak about that dive jump where you can make longer jumps because of it. Well, let's think about these moving platforms that Mario has. They go side to side when you're just trying to go straight forward. Well, now that you've got that dash jump, you have to time it rightly. By combining these mechanics, it's now adding a twist, making things more difficult for the player, making them understand that not only is it about making the jump, but it's now timing when to jump as well, which is great because now you're adding that layer, that complexity above it, where you are now mastering it yet again. So when you're creating these core mechanics as well, think about a certain twist to it. Whether it is rendering that mechanic useless or building upon it where it is testing the player's skill on a slightly different element within the mechanic that they already have. All of that there is fantastic ways to help make this core mechanic feel even better. And if you haven't played either of these games, I strongly recommend for you to check them out, as there's so much to learn from these mechanics. And especially in a day and age where there seems to be a lot of mechanics thrown or level ups, and you don't feel much of a difference. By having a strong base, you can build upon it far better than having lots of different structural things such as many different mechanics. So let's just go over what made these mechanics super important. One is that sense of mastery. How are you able to have a way to master this mechanic? What different variations does the player have to consider in order to become better with that mechanic? 2 is being able to use your core mechanic in a variety of ways. How can you use this in order to have a different impact, whether it be through puzzles, traversal, to combat? What different ways is there for you to make the player learn and grow and understand that this is important in different spaces? Then we have feedback. Making sure that the feedback is extremely strong and that players understand the state that you are using it in can help dramatically. So make sure you've got good signs and feedbacks of when you're going to use this. And then we have the twist as well. How can you add a twist in order to make sure that the mechanic has a different feel with in different spaces, whether it changes how you're learning the mechanic or even rendering it useless and making them use different mechanics? Make sure that you have a sense of a way to twist it so when players progress with it, that they know that there's different ways for this to be used. So there we have it. This is a really cool one for me. I really enjoyed both games and I had an amazing time playing them. It was a great study to look at these. Some fantastic ones. And I hope when you're coming up with your games that you can see there's different ways to do mechanics and make sure that you use these tips here to help make your mechanics even stronger. So thank you all very much. I just want to say a thank you to my patrons. I really do appreciate you, because it's because of you, all of you, that we're able to make something special and make something badass with this podcast, and that you can see that we are improving. And hopefully you'll see that there have been some improvements with the Patreon as well, in order to make it feel like you're gaining even more out of the service. If you are not a member of the Patreon, please do check it out. Otherwise, I'd like to ask a huge favor. If you listen to this on iTunes or any podcast player, please do rate the podcast 5 stars. That helps me know that I'm doing a good job, as well as helps to grow the community, as that's the important thing, is growing a community for us all to be a part of and share some amazing designs, tips with. And if you want to reach me, you can do so on Twitter @MaxPairs, or you can email me at leveldesignlobby@gmail.com. So thank you all very much. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I've enjoyed talking about it. And I'll catch you all next time.